What's up, guys? Got a battle here against Timeneon. I was testing out a BS HAX team this time. Well, the team turned out to be kind of awful, but the battle itself wasn't, it was alright, so here we go. I've also added some battle music, so that should spice things up a bit. Anyway, he goes with Machamp, I lead with Uxie. I just go for the Psychic right away. I'm not actually using a Trick Scarf Uxie, just a kind of a standard support Uxie with Lumberry to counter any sleep leads. He goes for a Payback. Now, with my EVs, it's going to do around 49%, so yeah, just a little under half. I think he's going to switch out, so instead of going for another Psychic, I'm actually going to set up Stealth Rock here. Now, I really thought he was going to set up Stealth Rock with his own Heatran, but he actually goes for a Fire Blast. Now, I have a few special defense EVs, and that really helps out here because I survived the Fire Blast and managed to get off a Thunder Wave, which is really nice. So yeah, that's going to be useful for later. Heatran doesn't really like being paralyzed, so I don't need Uxie anymore. I U-turn out just in case he decides to attack again. I bring in Gyarados because I'm pretty sure he's going to set up Stealth Rock, and I want to get Gyarados in before he gets any rocks up, because Gyarados doesn't exactly like switching in with that flying type. So he goes for another Fire Blast. Uxie might be useful for later, so I'm kind of glad I can keep it for Death Fodder or something of the sorts. Now, Gyarados also has Thunder Wave because I'm looking for as much paralysis support as possible on this team. He sends in a Starmie, and it doesn't look like it has leftovers, so I'm assuming it's a Life Orb Starmie. That kind of tells me that he doesn't have that great of a way to counter Gyarados, so I'm going to want to keep Gyarados. It looks like he has a bit of a weakness to it. So I send in Celebi. I'm pretty sure that he's going to switch out to Heatran, because I outspeed him when he's paralyzed, so I pull off a double switch here to my own Heatran. So yeah, he goes back into his Heatran, which is now paralyzed, and here's where the paralysis is really useful. I get to outspeed him and use Earth Power. I'm not really sure if I have a Shuka Berry, can't remember, this is kind of an old battle, so yeah, the paralysis was really helpful here. And that double switch helps me gain some momentum. So he sends out his own Gyarados. There's going to be a pretty epic Gyarados war later on during this match. But anyway, I'm not going to want to stay in with Heatran, so I go into my own Gyarados just to get that Intimidate off, because he's either going for a Waterfall or a Dragon Dance. So yeah, it is Dragon Dance. I really thought he was going to have Stone Edge and use that to try to KO my Gyarados here, so I switch over here. I'm going to go into my Scarf Jirachi, because that has Thunder Punch and can outspeed and KO Gyarados even after a Dragon Dance. He uses Taunt instead, which was kind of a weird choice, but whatever. So I go for the Thunder Punch. I didn't want to switch Jirachi directly into Gyarados earlier. I guess he manages to predict me because he goes into a Jolteon, and that's going to be annoying. He absorbs it with Volt Absorb and heals all his HP, and I'm forced to switch out. I realize at this point that I'm super weak to Jolteon, so I just go to Uxie to serve as Death Fodder. Not really sure what to do next. I'm going to just try to trick my Scarf onto that Jolteon because this team has absolutely nothing to do with Jolteon at the moment. He switches out instead, goes to a Shaman. It looks like it's some kind of standard Shaman, I suppose. There was leftovers, so there's always the possibility that it was my favorite Leech Seed set. I thought he would use Earth Power or Hidden Power Fire, but he makes a nice prediction and goes for Seed Flare when I go to Gyarados, but it misses, so that really sucks for him. Since he now has a Choice Scarf and is locked into Seed Flare, I just decide to switch to Celebi, because Celebi will be able to take that Seed Flare nicely. It has max HP EVs. That 403 is just because HP Fire reduces my HP IV to 30. So yeah, he switches out at this point. And I decided to switch out too because I was really paranoid about Seed Flare lowering my special defense. So he goes into a Machamp, I use Fire Blast. Since Machamp has no guard, I can be sure that Fire Blast will hit, so at least I didn't have to worry about it missing and getting nailed in the face by a Dynamic Punch. He goes to Starmie now, and I just decide that I'm going to stay in because I really thought he would predict me and use Ice Beam since he thought I would go to a Celebi. But either I was overthinking or he just did a double prediction because he stays in and uses Surf. But Heatran is pretty bulky, and I managed to survive that with just 45 HP left, not very much at all. And I do get off that Hidden Power Grass and take out Starmie, which is really nice. But he still has that Gyarados, which is going to make things difficult for Heatran. I'm kind of having some problems here because he has that Gyarados Jolteon offensive combination, and that's going to give me some problems. I didn't want to overpredict, so I just kept Heatran into the waterfall, just to let it serve as death fodder while I figure out what to do next. So now I go into Celebi, and I use Grass Knot because I do have Thunder Wave, but I thought that he might predict that and go into Jolteon, so he sets up a Dragon Dance here. Now, Celebi is usually bulky enough to take any of Gyarados' attacks, so I thought that I could stay in and finish him off. Maybe he had Stone Edge or something for his last move slot, but instead it turns out to be Bounce, which is pretty much the worst possible option for me. So yeah, I didn't think he would switch out. I used Thunder Wave, but of course it doesn't work because he bounced up. I've seen Celebi actually survive bounces before, so I just decided to stay in. But I'm not so lucky this time because Celebi will actually end up dying. So I may actually get swept by a Gyarados, which has hardly ever happened. Not so happy about that. While I figure out what to do, I just go into my own Gyarados to get the Intimidate drop. And because I have Thunder Wave, which I was planning to get him with, but he predicts me, uses Taunt, so there goes that strategy. Now, I don't have much left to do. I do have one Pokemon left, though, but I'm not going to bring that out quite yet. So he Dragon Dances up, I try to use Bounce, but then I realize that since we both have Bounce, whoever bounces first will lose, because the second bouncer will go up, dodge the first person's bounce, and come down after the first person comes down from their bounce. I really think I should keep Gyarados, so I just go into Jirachi to take that Bounce. Now, Bounce does have a 30% paralysis rate, and that actually gets me over here, so that's kind of annoying. I don't really think there's much left for Jirachi to do, so I'm pretty sure that I just stay in and leave it as death fodder. I was going to try to get off a Thunder Punch just to see if I could take out Gyarados, but that doesn't exactly work because he crits me, and I'm not really sure if Jirachi would have survived that otherwise, but Jirachi is pretty bulky, so not really sure. I send in Machamp because I think I can get in a Dynamic Punch, and Machamp is bulky enough to take a Waterfall, but then he... Wait, flinches? Oh, come on, Machamp! Suck it up! I could have taken that Waterfall. Yeah, the irony is pretty strong here. Basically, my Para-Hacks team getting hacked over to death. Yeah, not turning out so well for me. I think I might want to keep Machamp for later, so I just go back into Gyarados to get another Intimidate drop and just try to figure out what to do. So I need to keep in mind my Bounce strategies from earlier. So I thought he would use Bounce, so since he's faster than me after some Dragon Dance speed boosts, I just use Bounce after him. And I do come down afterwards as I thought. It does kind of a lot of damage actually, which is nice. So not really sure what he's going to do now. He used his Waterfall because I guess he must have caught on to my Bounce strategy, so he's obviously not going to be bouncing up again. So, but I keep it up because I thought he might have bounced a second time. So then he bounces up. I'm going to come down after this. Bounce misses, of course, because he's up in the air. Get that Leftovers recovery. This is kind of a weird matchup. The taunt wears off, and that's really nice here because that means I can Thunder Wave when he comes down from the bounce. And this is kind of the turning point of the battle because now I finally get to regain my momentum. You can see how paralysis really cripples a lot of opponents. So since I'm faster than him and taunt has worn off, I go for a Dragon Dance, and he's paralyzed. That's kind of sucks for him. I'm just going to try to get another Dragon Dance, basically boost up as much as I can to prepare myself for the later stages of the battle. I think he's actually going to go for a taunt here. So yeah, I have to stop Dragon Dancing. Keeping in mind the bouncing strategies from earlier, I'm just going to use Waterfall the whole time instead of bouncing because he could abuse that and hit me after I come down from my bounce. Now, Waterfall hits him and he flinches. With Paralysis and Waterfall, he only has a 60% chance to actually attack, make a move at all, so it's a pretty good chance for me to just flinch him or paralyze him to death. So flinch the first time, paralyze the second time. So yeah, Paralysis is pretty broken, especially with a relatively high flinch rate move like Waterfall. So that last Waterfall will finish him off. I didn't even have to use Bounce, which was pretty good. Taunt wears off, coincidentally. He sends in a Jolteon, and I've gotten in 2 Dragon Dances. so I will be able to outspeed him and KO with Waterfall. Just by coincidence, I'm actually running a Jolly Gyarados, so it's designed to outspeed Jolteon even after one Dragon Dance, so it wouldn't really have mattered either way. And now he actually decides to run, so good game.